Welcome, dear students. Today we are going to discuss an important topic on transport of peptide hormones. The main objectives of today's lecture are to get a brief idea about the peptide hormones, to know how peptide hormones are synthesized, to describe about the regulation of peptide hormones, to know about the secretion of peptide hormones, and finally, we will describe the transport of peptide hormones. To begin with, let us first discuss the peptide hormones. Peptide hormones are composed of polypeptide chains with a size ranging from 3 to hundreds of amino acid units. Peptide hormone synthesis involves several steps occurring in the nucleus and cytoplasm of secretory cells, including gene transcription into the precursor nuclear ribonucleic acid, post-transcriptional modification of the precursor messenger ribonucleic acid transcript, translation of the mature messenger ribonucleic acid, and co-translational and post-translational modifications of the hormonal peptide. Synthesis of peptide hormones is regulated at one or more of the aforementioned biosynthetic steps in order to meet the secretory requirements of endocrine glands. Once they are synthesized, peptide hormones are packaged into secretory granules until appropriate stimuli result in their secretion into the extracellular space. Secretion is not uniform, but rather follows pulsatile patterns and rhythmic changes, which in association with feedback mechanisms ensure that hormone production is adequate and prevent the excessive release of hormones. Most peptide hormones are water soluble and therefore do not require carrier proteins to circulate in the bloodstream. This property results in rapid hormone degradation by plasma proteases and a shorter half-life and duration of action compared to other types of hormones, such as steroid and thyroid hormones. Dear students, now moving on to the synthesis of peptide hormones. Peptide hormones typically are produced by secretory cells containing substantial amounts of rough endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi sacs, which represent the sites where peptide hormones are synthesized and packaged. These cells contain often highly abundant secretory vesicles, which are formed from the Golgi apparatus and store the synthesized hormones prior to their secretion in response to appropriate stimuli. Most peptide hormones are composed of a single amino acid chain or the association of two or more peptide subunits encoded by a single gene. Conversely, some glycosylated, that is glycoprotein peptide hormones like follicle stimulating hormone or FSH, luteinizing hormone or LH, chorionic gonadotropin hormone or HCG, and thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH consist of two non-covalently linked subunits encoded by separate genes on separate chromosomes. While each individual peptide hormone has a distinct profile of molecular actions and physiological functions, many peptide hormones are recognized to belong to families that share genetic and peptide structural homologies, insights that are essential for aspects of their conformation and biological activity. Examples include the growth hormone family, that is growth hormone or GH, placental lactogen and prolactin, the glycoprotein hormone family, that is FSH, LH, HCG and TSH, and the insulin-like growth factor family, that is insulin, IGF-1 and IGF-2. The homologies in these peptide hormone families are thought to reflect their evolutionary emergence from a common ancestral gene. The synthesis of peptide hormones often involves several steps occurring in the nucleus and cytoplasm of secretory cells. These steps include gene transcription to form the precursor heterogeneous nuclear ribonucleic acid or hnRNA. Second, post-transcriptional modifications of the hnRNA transcript. Third step involves the translation of the mature messenger RNA or mRNA into the encoded peptide chain, and finally co-translational and post-translational modifications of the peptide chain. Now, before moving to the secretion of peptide hormones, we must be well aware about how exactly peptide hormone synthesis process is regulated. Synthesis of peptide hormones is finely regulated at one or more of the 4 biosynthetic steps involved in gene expression, thus assuring that production of specific peptide hormones matches the secretory requirement of endocrine glands under different physiological conditions. At the transcriptional level, for example, the interaction between DNA binding proteins and regulatory element influences the rate of production of the initial RNA transcript. Post-transcriptional alternative splicing in the nucleus and post-translational modifications in the endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus regulate the synthesis of tissue-specific hormone variants. Additional examples of control points include the transport of RNA from the nucleus to the cytoplasm, the regulation of mRNA stability, and the resulting steady state amount of the active mRNA in the cytoplasm, the formation of the initiation complex during translation, and the control of secretory granule release. Dear students, now moving on to the secretion of peptide hormones into the bloodstream from the endocrine glands. As a result of change in cytoplasmic calcium concentrations, peptide hormones are released from secretory granules by exocytosis, a process characterized by cytoskeleton protein mediated migration of the granules towards the cell surface, followed by their fusion with the plasma membrane and delivery of hormones into the extracellular space. The secretion of peptide hormones from endocrine cells follows the so-called regulated secretory pathway, where hormones are not continuously secreted, but rather they are secreted acutely in response to a stimulus. In the absence of secretory stimuli, endocrine cells are able to store mature granules containing high concentrations of peptide hormones. When the appropriate signal or stimuli occurs, endocrine cells then can rapidly release higher amounts of hormones than would be possible if this depended on de novo synthesis in response to the secretory signal. Peptide hormone secretion may be controlled by several stimulatory factors, including metabolites, hormones, and neuropeptides, which are released in response to modifications in homeostatic balance. For example, hormones such as insulin and parathyroid hormone are secreted in response to increases in circulating levels of glucose and calcium respectively. When these metabolites return to the normal range, insulin and parathyroid hormone secretion decreases. As an example of other secretory control mechanisms, the release of hypothalamic hormones results from the interaction between central nervous system stimuli that include stress, afferent stimuli, and neuropeptides. Once hypothalamic hormones are secreted into the system, they cause the release of pituitary hormones, which in turn control the secretion of peripheral hormones in their respective target glands. Secretion of peptide hormones such as insulin and glucagon may be also directly regulated by the autonomic nervous system through postganglionic sympathetic nerves. Hormone secretion is not uniform, but rather it is characterized by a periodic pulsatile release with a rapid increase and subsequent decrease, which is hormone specific and induced by environmental or hormonal cues. Pulses may have variable frequency and amplitude. The frequency of bursts of release of most peptide hormones ranges from 4 to 30 minutes. For example, for insulin and glucagon and parathyroid hormone to 45 to 180 minutes. For example, anterior pituitary hormones. The amplitude of pituitary hormone pulses may vary up to 1,000-fold in the same individual on the same day, while insulin release shows lower pulse amplitude. In addition to pulsatile patterns, hormones may show rhythmic change. Some of the rhythmic patterns are principally determined by environmental stimuli such as the light-dark cycle or the sleep-wake cycle, while other patterns are regulated by an internal biological clock within the body. Hormone secretion bursts occurring with a frequency of about 1 hour are defined as circoral. A frequency of secretion longer than 1 hour but shorter than 24 hours is termed ultradian. The interaction between the retina and hypothalamic suprachiasmatic nuclei in response to light plays a major role in determining the circadian pattern of secretion, which shows a periodicity of about 24 hours. Adenocorticotropic hormone or ACTH is an example of peptide hormone with marked circadian rhythm characterized by a sharp increase of its plasma levels during the early morning hours. A longer periodicity may be seen for other hormones such as the gonadotropins, with preovulatory peaks occurring every 30 days during the menstrual cycle. Hormone concentrations are also regulated by closed loop feedback mechanisms, which are the responses of target cells to control levels of the hormones that originally stimulated them. Negative feedback, which inhibits the initial hormone signal, is the most common mechanism modulating hormone secretion. The examples of the positive feedback mechanism are the childbirth, while as that of the negative feedback mechanism are that of the glucose. Conversely, positive feedback increases the initial stimuli. 3 patterns of feedback may occur: long loop, short loop, and ultra short loop. An example of negative feedback is the inhibition of the adenohypophyseal hormone ACTH and hypothalamic hormone corticotropin releasing hormone or CRH by cortisol. The secretion of cortisol is stimulated by adenocorticotropic hormone and CRH in the adrenal gland. The control of the ACTH and CRH by cortisol is a designated long feedback loop because of the need for cortisol to travel from its site of secretion in the adrenals to the central nervous system located hypothalamus and pituitary gland. A short feedback loop is exemplified by the inhibition of CRH by ACTH, requiring the movement of ACTH between the specially close pituitary and hypothalamus. whereas an ultra short loop is exemplified by the feedback inhibition by CRH of its own secretion in the hypothalamus. An example of positive feedback is the preovulatory surge of luteinizing hormone or LH during the menstrual cycle. LH induces the secretion of estradiol by the ovary, and when estradiol reaches a threshold level, it induces a rapid increase in luteinizing hormone production, the so-called preovulatory surge of LH, which is key driver of ovulation, that is the release of egg from the ovaries. This and other positive feedback mechanisms are self-limiting. After reaching a peak, LH levels progressively decline even if estradiol levels are still elevated. This results from the limited capacity of secretory cells to produce luteinizing hormone and the action of additional negative feedback loops. Dear students, finally, let us discuss the transport of peptide hormones. Most peptide hormones are soluble in aqueous solvents and do not require carrier proteins for transport in the bloodstream. This makes them vulnerable to rapid protease degradation, resulting in a short plasma half-life and duration of action. By contrast, the non-peptide steroid and thyroid hormones circulate in association with specific binding proteins and have relatively long plasma half-lives. A small number of peptide hormones do circulate in association with binding proteins, including the growth hormone or GH, insulin like growth factors or IGF-1 and IGF-2, and CRH. The growth hormone binding protein or GHBP is a soluble form of the membrane-bound growth hormone receptor, composed of a part of the extracellular domain of the GHR. It is generated by a metalloproteinase proteolytic cleavage and binds approximately 50% of circulating growth hormone. The function of the GHBP, that is growth hormone binding protein, is not completely understood yet. However, it may serve to increase growth hormone half-life in the circulation or reduce growth hormone availability to membrane-bound growth hormone receptor. Insulin-like growth factors like IGFs are also bound to high-affinity carrier proteins in the circulation and in the extracellular space. IGF binding proteins or IGF-BPs are a family of 6 proteins sharing homologies in gene and protein structure. All of these IGF-BPs, with the exception of IGF-BP6, bind IGF-1 and IGF-2 with similar affinity, while as IGF-BP6 binds IGF-2 with a 40-fold higher affinity than IGF-1. By binding IGFs, IGF binding proteins regulate their transport in the blood and access to the extravascular spaces, their half-lives and metabolic clearance, their tissue and cell type distributions, and their interactions with IGF receptors, and thereby modulate tissue-specific biological actions of the IGFs. IGF-BP3 is the most abundant form of IGF-BP in plasma. So, binding of IGF-1 to IGF-BP3 provides a stable reservoir of hormone in circulation, which can be released in a more active form at cell surface sites of IGF-1 action. The high affinity binding of IGFs to IGF-BPs and the low percentage of IGF circulating in free unbound form results in relatively stable concentrations and a longer half-life of IGF-1 in comparison, for example, with growth hormone, which is much less extensively protein bound. Next, the CRH binding protein is thought to have important functions in the regulation of CRH action. CRH binding protein may decrease CRH action by decreasing the availability of CRH for binding with its cellular receptors. The complex also influences CRH signaling activity that may include a role in terminating CRH signaling by accelerating its clearance, enhancing activity by protecting CRH from degradation under other conditions, and increasing signaling by contributing to the transport of CRH to target tissues in the body. Dear students, it was all about today's lecture. Thank you. Goodbye.